Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Esteban Gonzalez, the project development engineer with the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And the NMDOT has hired the local engineering firm Radian to conduct this engineering study of the St. Francis and St. Michael's Interchange, formerly known as US 84 285 and New Mexico 466. The project number is S100 440. Tonight, this is our second public meeting to present the findings of the Phase 1B analysis. We have been working in partnership with the City of Santa Fe and Santa Fe Metropolitan Planning Organization. Before we introduce the study team here, we want to provide some brief instructions to listen in Spanish. With that, I'll turn it over to John Foster. John, go ahead.
Actually, John is in the Spanish channel right now.
All right, I'll give it a go.
Okay.
Para escuchar esta presentación en español, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, haga clic Spanish, y para escuchar solo en español, debe hacer clic en Mute Original Audio. All right, now we will introduce the study team participants. Tonight with the NMDOT, we have our District 5 engineer, Mr. Paul Brasher, our Assistant District Engineer, Javier Martinez, myself, our Public Involvement Specialist, Jennifer Mullins, Carlos Padilla, our Project Manager with Radian, John Toshik, our Environmental Subconsultant, and Claudia Meyer-Horn, also our Subconsultant with Design Office. And before we start the presentation, I'd like to see if our district engineer, Mr. Paul Brasher, has some opening remarks for us today. Go ahead, Paul.
Thank you, Esteban. My name is Paul Brasher. I'm the New Mexico Department of Transportation District 5 engineer. Within District 5 is the City and County of Santa Fe. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight to review the work to date on this reconstruction of the intersection of St. Francis and St. Michael's. I have with me on this call some of my colleagues. Let me mention their names. Mr. Javier Martinez, who's the Assistant District Engineer for District 5. He's the ADE for Engineering. Of course, you met Mr. Esteban Gonzalez from North Region Design. I think Steve Giesler from our Environmental Bureau is on. I think Jennifer Mullins from our Environmental Bureau is on. And Mr. Jim Murray, who's the Public Information Officer for District 5, is joining us as well. Just a couple of comments about where we are here. Santa Fe is a city that is both growing and aging, and particularly outgrowing some of its infrastructure in the areas of transportation infrastructure. This project has been in considerable need for a long time. It serves both regional and local needs as they've grown over the decades. We're pleased to present tonight the status of our progress, and we welcome for consideration any comments which you all might have in these early phases of its planning. Toward that end, we've assembled a highly qualified team of consultants from Radian Engineering, Ecosphere, and Design Office who have enthusiastically undertaken the challenges in thoroughly developing the project's background and devising its alternatives, which we'll step through. As in all we do, a reminder that our priorities are always safety, economy, multimodal mobility, environmental protection, and cultural resources preservation. In this effort, as with all of our efforts in this area, we have the full cooperation and appreciate the cooperation of the general public, the users as a whole, individually and collectively. the City of Santa Fe and the Santa Fe Metropolitan Planning Organization. That would be the Santa Fe MPO. Again, thank you for your participation and joining us tonight. Back to you, Esteban. Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Paul. Go ahead, Carlos.
Yeah, so thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Paul. My name is Carlos Padilla, and as was mentioned, I'm the project manager from Radiant Engineering, and we are the lead consultant working for the NMDOT developing this project. Wanted to start a little bit, just go over the agenda for tonight's presentation. Esteban has introduced the study team to you. I'm going to just briefly go over the department's process for developing studies and into the design phase. We're going to talk a little bit about the purpose and need for this study. I'm going to give you an overview of the study area and some of the existing conditions in this area. We're going to let you know, discuss briefly some of the key issues that we've identified as part of the study process. And as Esteban mentioned, we did have a previous public meeting, I think in April of 2021. So I'm going to go over a little bit of some of the comments that we heard from you, the public, as part of that meeting. And then I'm going to delve into the 4 alternatives that are the subject of tonight's presentation. And that's the Phase B alternatives. We'll discuss the next step following the study phase that we're concluding now, and then we will open it up to a general question and answer session. So this graphic displays the New Mexico Department of Transportation location study procedures. And what I really want to emphasize is where we're at in the process. As we mentioned, the study has gone through its initial evaluation or Phase A evaluation, and we have had a previous public involvement meeting to discuss that. And then we are here. We are in the process of concluding the detailed evaluation of alternatives, and that's the purpose of tonight's presentation, is to briefly describe to you what the alternatives are and what we have concluded as part of our study process. From there, it will continue to move into follow-on phases, which include an environmental documentation phase, and then moving on into preliminary design. So the purpose and need for this study can be summarized as the following: to address physical, operational, and safety deficiencies, and to enhance pedestrian and bicycle connectivity throughout the project interchange area. And we have some photos showing condition of the existing structure, some of the deficient entry points onto St. Francis that we'll talk about, just general conditions that we've identified. So an overview of the study. So a vicinity map on the right. So to orientate everybody, north is up. So this is St. Francis that runs in the north-south direction. And then crossing underneath is St. Michael's Drive, and eventually connecting down to Cerrillos Road. So the study area is depicted here along St. Francis, goes from Siringo Road on the south, north to San Mateo Road on the north. And along St. Michael's Drive, it goes from Galisteo Street through the ramp intersections to Pacheco Street. As Paul mentioned, this facility is regionally and locally important. St. Francis Drive provides access from I-25 to the south of the study area to communities located further north of Santa Fe in the north central part of the state. And both St. Francis Drive and St. Michael's Drive are important arterial roadways within Santa Fe's local transportation network. Some of the key issues that we've identified as part of the study process. Operations and safety. One of the primary things that we've identified is the lack of merge lines at the on-ramps to St. Francis Drive. So again, looking north along St. Francis, we have northbound ramp that comes from westbound St. Michael's and comes into St. Francis Drive, and it abruptly ends. There's no merge lane to let people safely find their way into traffic in that direction. It's a similar situation using the Cloverleaf ramp, if you're headed east on St. Michael's, coming around, you're forced to be at a stop condition here. There is no space for you to safely travel across the bridge and merge into traffic. And the third area is on the northbound ramp on the other side of the interchange, heading south toward I-25. Again, abruptly ends at its intersection with St. Francis Drive. No good space to merge into traffic. Those are some key deficiencies in terms of operations. Additionally, and related to that is the proximity of this ramp coming from St. Michael's to St. Francis. It is very close to West San Mateo Road, and it causes what we term weave problems in terms of traffic. If you're coming on this location and want to turn left at West San Mateo, it creates a lot of conflict in this area. Similarly, if you're coming off the northbound ramp from St. Francis and you want to go toward Galisteo, the current configuration of this intersection takes you onto Galisteo, and there's that similar weave condition that exists if you wanted to go left on Galisteo Street. Associated with those should be no surprise, we've identified crash hotspots within the study area, and the crash hotspots include two of those on-ramp merge areas, both northbound and southbound as you're coming on, again, primarily due to the lack of the non-existence of the merge lanes there. A third one is at the ramp intersection itself on the west side of the intersection, or that's the second one. And then a third one is associated with this approach to Galisteo, and again, the merge condition that exists there. So there's not all of them, but those are some primary crash hotspots that we've identified. Okay, key issues that we're considering in the study. So obviously, one of the main features is the existing bridge that carries St. Francis Drive over St. Michael's. The structure was built in 1974. It's currently approaching 50 years in age. As I previously described, that Cloverleaf ramp abruptly ends on St. Francis, and that's just to the south of the bridge. The bridge does not have room to extend a merge lane over the bridge further north on St. Francis Drive. We've identified some structural and functional concerns with the aging structure as well. And we do know that this structure type, you'll notice that it's not the typical kind of beam structure that you see. It's not considered a good candidate for rehabilitation. And keeping in mind that the structure is approaching 50 years in age. Multimodal facilities. One of the main focuses of this study is to look at how we can improve multimodal connectivity throughout the study area. Some of the key issues we've identified is the lack of pedestrian access north-south along St. Francis Drive and lack of connectivity to the surrounding neighborhoods that results from that. Within the interchange area itself, there's missing sidewalks and unmarked crossings on St. Michael's Drive. At intersections in general, we observed that there are long crossing distances and lack of pedestrian refuge areas at those intersections. St. Michael's Drive itself, there are existing bicycle lanes east of Galisteo, but they're lacking through the project area, through the interchange area, and to the west. And lastly, there are 4 bus stops in the project area, 2 of them at the Galisteo Street intersection on St. Michael's, and 2 of them at Pacheco Street on St. Michael's. And all of them are lacking proper ADA access, proper seating, and proper shelter. Okay, so the previous public engagement that was held, we mentioned there was a public meeting held in April of 2021 to discuss the results of the Phase A analysis. If you go to the project website, and here's the address, bit.ly/St. Mike's, you can find a public meeting summary there, and also a recording of the meeting that was held itself. So they're available for you to review in detail at your leisure. In general, we received over 40 public comments. Just to summarize overall, There was general support for the improvements being considered under this study. There was mixed support and opposition to the various initial alternatives that we presented. I think there was consensus that safety and multimodal improvements were needed in the study area. There were some general questions regarding things like cost, time frame, impacts that might result from construction of the project, and potential right-of-way impacts. We did receive some comments and concerns regarding issues that were outside of the study area that we're looking at. And we did receive some suggested modifications to some of the alternatives that we presented. Esteban mentioned that the department has been working in close coordination with both the city of Santa Fe and the Santa Fe MPO throughout the study process. And one key event that has occurred since the public meeting in April 2021 is that the NMDOT and the city of Santa Fe have completed a road exchange. So previously, St. Michael's was owned and operated by the NMDOT. Now that has turned over to the city of Santa Fe. So the city now owns and operates St. Michael's Drive. The NMDOT maintains ownership of St. Francis Drive. And as part of that, the city did make a formal request to the department that we include a 4-lane option for the St. Michael's portion of this project through the interchange area. So moving on into the study itself, we established a range of evaluation criteria. And what we do with that is we use this evaluation criteria to compare how well each of the alternatives that I'm going to share with you in a minute addresses each of these evaluation criteria. We looked at things in terms of, does the alternative meet the purpose and need of the project? How well does it address some of those physical and geometric deficiencies that I described? Does it improve traffic operations? Does it improve safety within the study area? How does it improve multimodal facilities? What are the environmental considerations that are associated with each of these alternatives? We also looked at constructability. This is going to be a major project as it moves forward. How constructible is it? And a key ingredient here is, how do we maintain traffic throughout construction? Because these are both heavily traveled roadways within Santa Fe, and it is going to be a challenge. We also look at project cost as part of that. So I'm going to move on to describe the alternatives that we're looking at. So the Phase B alternatives, alternative 1 is the signalized intersection. So over on the right-hand side, again, same orientation. St. Francis runs north and south, St. Michael's east and west. So what this does right now, if you can see this curvature in the alignment, under this alternative, we actually shift the alignment a bit to the east, because currently St. Francis runs more in a linear direction, north-south. The purpose for that, I'll touch a little bit later, is so that we can build a lot of the intersection while maintaining traffic on St. Francis. So this, again, would take out the bridge. There would be no more interchange and ramps. What would happen is the main line on St. Francis would be brought down to meet the existing elevation of St. Michael's, and it would involve an at-grade signalized intersection similar to what exists in the corridor now, both to the north and south of this study area. So some of the positives, this alternative does address the purpose and need for the project. It gives us a comparison. The other 3 alternatives that I'll describe are all maintaining the grade separation and alternative interchange configurations. This one gives us an at-grade alternative that we can compare it to. It does improve pedestrian and bicycle access, and primarily what it would do is it would complete the pedestrian access north-south along St. Francis with sidewalks along St. Francis Drive. This is an existing multi-use trail that is present within the southeast quadrant of the interchange. It would be connected to and maintained as part of the improvements. Some of the downsides to this alternative is that removing that grade separation, these roads are heavily traveled. There's more than probably 45,000 vehicles a day on St. Francis and more than probably 26,000 vehicles a day on St. Michael's. So it would require a multi-lane intersection to accommodate those volumes. Associated with that versus the interchange alternatives, there would be increased delay at this intersection. It would have a higher accident potential. It would involve extensive utility impacts. Right now, as you approach the existing bridge along St. Francis Drive, it's in an earthen fill. There are a ton of existing utilities, fiber optics, water lines, a lot of infrastructure within that existing earthen berm. And that would be removed after this intersection is built. To bring it back down to grade, this would come down as much as 24 feet. So there would be a lot of earthwork and a lot of utilities that would be disturbed under this alternative. As well, drainage impacts. There is a drainage pond that exists. It's just outside the existing ramp that's there now, but with this shift in alignment, it would need to be relocated. Some other good things in terms of the way it handles traffic. As a result of offsetting the alignment here, it would let you build a lot of this while you maintain traffic on St. Francis. So it does have reduced impacts to traffic during construction, and it does have a lower cost among the 4 alternatives. Alternative 2 is the Diamond Interchange. Now the Diamond Interchange shown here on your right would maintain the existing ramp configuration that's there on the west side of St. Francis Drive, and it would reconfigure what's on the east side of St. Francis Drive by reconfiguring that west to north ramp that's there and removing and reconfiguring what is now an existing cloverleaf. Now, as part of these improvements, the way those merge areas would be addressed is in the northbound direction, this new ramp, this would be it's called a diamond because it forms a diamond shape. This would be a new intersection. So if you wanted to head north, you'd come through the intersection here. So when it comes in, we would add a 4th lane in the northbound direction in order to let traffic merge in. Now it's still close to West San Mateo, so that 4th lane would actually have to extend through the intersection before it came back in and the merge lane ended. Similarly, in the south direction, we would add a 4th lane southbound that would come in adjacent to St. Francis, giving everyone adequate room to merge into traffic. It would end somewhere before Siringo Road. Similarly, this would improve pedestrian and bicycle access. Pedestrian access, instead of under the signalized alternative, the sidewalks here would come along the outside of the ramps, cross St. Michael's Drive, come along outside of this ramp all the way down. So it would make a connection all the way between Siringo and West San Mateo. Sidewalks would be added as well along St. Michael's through the interchange area, and connections made to this existing multi-trail that exists here. We would connect to it to bring it back down to this intersection. So I described the fact that one of the downsides is that even though we reconfigured it, this merge movement is still very close to West San Mateo and is problematic. This alternative is comparison to certainly compared to some of the other alternatives, does have some greater impact during construction in terms of how you're going to build this bridge. You're going to have to take traffic off and on and put temporary intersections here so that you can do the main construction in the body of the intersection. And as with all the alternative interchange alternatives, it does have a higher cost. Alternative 3 is the ramp reconfiguration. Again, it's similar to alternative 2 in that the ramps on the west side of St. Francis Drive do remain in their current configuration. The difference here is instead of completing a diamond, we would still remove the westbound and northbound ramp, but now what we're going to do is remove that and also the cloverleaf ramp and still put a new intersection on St. Michael's, and both traffic heading either east or west on St. Michael's would come through that and come on this new horseshoe entrance that would come up to the south and enter onto St. Francis, well south of the new bridge. So one of the key things here is that it gives us more separation between West San Mateo and this where this merge lane begins. It would actually cross the new bridge structure, which would be widened, and it would be able to merge back into traffic before we get to San Mateo and eliminate the impact of that intersection of having to carry that merge lane through the intersection as was described under the Diamond Interchange. In terms of pedestrian access, again, similar sidewalks along the outside of the ramps on the west side, connectivity to the multi-use trail that exists here, bringing it down to St. Michael's, and full pedestrian and bicycle improvements along St. Michael's. It does have a higher cost in terms of the alternatives we're looking at. And the fourth and final alternative is the split bridge northbound left-on access. This might take a little bit more describing, but basically what it would do, again, this is the existing alignment right down the middle. It would split this, so it would bring northbound St. Francis and flare it out to the east a little bit, cross it over St. Michael's, and then back in to the existing alignment before it gets to San Mateo, and the same in the southbound direction, coming through the intersection, splitting it up, a separate bridge taking it over St. Michael's Drive, and then coming back in at this location. The primary, well, let me just continue to describe movements here. So that would be the main line. The difference here is that the off-ramp would stay. If you're coming south on St. Francis, you'd still use that same off-ramp to get to St. Michael's. And if you're coming north on St. Francis, you would take this new reconfigured ramp similar to what was under the Diamond Interchange. What would be different is there would be a third intersection that would be built between these two new bridges. And you would actually go through this intersection to access or to get onto St. Francis Drive in the northbound direction or in the southbound direction. That's why we call it left on, because instead of merging from the outside on the right-hand side, you would come up and merge from the inside. So it is very, very different in its operations and in those aspects. It does address the purpose and need for the project. It improves pedestrian and bicycle access, again, in similar ways on the west side of St. Michael's and connectivity on the east side. We would utilize the areas where these ramps were removed, maybe do some enhanced pedestrian improvements in these areas. It would, similar to the intersection alternative, because when this was built, the existing earthen structure that leads to the existing bridge would be removed. So again, these on-ramps would have to come down and meet the existing elevation of St. Michael's Drive, and same situation in terms of utility impacts that would happen there. Probably the biggest benefit to this would be it among all the alternatives, it would have the least impact to traffic during construction. And the primary reason is because we could maintain that existing traffic on St. Francis Drive the entire time we were building these new bridges, and the majority of these new approaches, we would not have to take traffic down to temporary signals. I mean, there would be some of that, but a majority of the construction should be done while we maintain the grade separation, taking St. Francis Drive over St. Michael's. And again, as an interchange alternative, it does have a high cost. Just wanted to give you a little visual, kind of some illustrative footprints of St. Francis Drive and St. Michael's Drive. So under this would be looking at a cross section on St. Francis Drive, and this would happen somewhere south of the bridge. And what you'd be seeing, St. Francis Drive, excuse me, is currently 3 lanes in each direction. There would be no difference there. It would still be 3 lanes in either direction. But what you would be seeing here is this would be this merge lane that I talked about from the southbound on-ramp that would come in and allow you additional space to merge into the mainline traffic. And also the other primary difference here is that we would be including pedestrian improvements all along St. Francis Drive. St. Michael's Drive, now it changes a little bit through the interchange area. It's kind of, some areas are 6 lanes, some areas are 5 lanes. This section's taken to the east of the bridge where there's 4 lanes and some wider outside shoulders. So we looked at 2 alternative or optional roadway sections through there. We looked first at taking what's existing coming from the west through Pacheco Street. Right now, St. Michael's is 6 lanes, so we looked at extending those 6 lanes through the interchange up to Galisteo Street, where it goes to a 4-lane facility. The difference here, again, would be there would be 1 additional lane, and under this, we would be adding buffer areas, bicycle lanes through the study area, additional buffer lanes, and sidewalks along St. Michael's. As I mentioned, in response to the City of Santa Fe request to consider 4 lanes, we did look at a 4-lane option through the interchange, just the opposite. So under this, we would be taking the 4 lanes that exist at East Galisteo and extending them through the interchange area toward Pacheco. So we would only maintain 4 lanes through the interchange area, but in a similar fashion, we would have buffer areas, on-street bike lanes, additional buffer areas, and sidewalks to the outside. We looked at some smaller options. We looked at some possible intersection configurations, one at Siringo Road, where we would take what's now a single left-hand turn lane as you're going north and you're turning west onto Siringo towards Santa Fe High. We looked at an option that would add another turn lane to that. We looked at some optional improvements at the off-ramp coming from St. Francis to St. Michael's. And we looked at some options at West San Mateo Road, the possibility of adding a left turn lane there as you're heading east, trying to go north on St. Francis. I'm going to let Claudia talk a little bit about some additional improvement opportunities that are under consideration on this as part of the study.
Thank you, Carlos. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we accommodate is the flow of transit through the area. There's a number of bus routes that navigate this intersection along St. Mike's and St. Francis, with a few bus stops along the edges. One of the main objectives with this is going to be to make sure that any of the bus stops flow with the multimodal facilities, the new bike lanes and the pedestrian circulation within this area, so that there's a good connectivity. The other consideration is, as Carlos mentioned too, is addressing some of the shortfalls of the actual bus stops. So making sure that they're accessible, that they have the right structures and seating, and making sure the systems are all integrated and meet ADA accessibility. So from a landscape standpoint and green infrastructure, one of the things that with the new configurations, we'd like to look at it from a standpoint of stormwater management and green infrastructure. So looking at opportunities for taking some of the surface flows that fall onto the impervious surfaces, directing them there towards swales by using curb cuts and planting native vegetation in those areas to just help with the absorb some of the storm water and create kind of a nicer streetscape environment. We recognize, so there's a couple of ways that we can do this on the section here. This shows some opportunities for what to do along St. Francis Drive with curb cuts. There's a lot of open space areas, so I think there's a lot of opportunities there for infiltration. And by doing this, I think it reduces the impact on the arroyos by keeping more of the stormwater within these zones. So there's a number of ways to do this. This shows curb cuts with swales There's rain gardens that we can do, and bioretention ponds. And the planting scheme will, by and large, be a native drought-tolerant palette, much like what you see out there now, maybe a little bit more focused on pollinator habitat. So all of those opportunities we'll be looking at. And the St. Francis Drive section that's shown here will probably remain dominantly native. The St. Michael's section that's now a city road will be vegetated in coordination with the city and following city guidelines. And the bridge itself and the alternative that has bridges is something that will be done in coordination with the public, with input from the public. There's going to be an effort to make sure that the design is something that fits within Santa Fe and works with the existing palette of colors and materials and provides a sense of place. In other locations, there have been what's called a cafe process where there's a call for artist entry. Typically that's with a local artist to provide the designs for aesthetic treatments along the bridge. So this includes all surface aesthetics or artwork, looking at different designs for railings, lighting, and other artistic elements that help blend it in and make it uniquely of this location. And as I mentioned, this is something that the project team will be looking for public input on this to make sure it is appealing to everyone for this spot. And John is going to talk about the NEPA process.
Thank you, Claudia. As Carlos mentioned, the next phase in the project is the environmental process, phase C. And because the project has state and federal money, we're compelled to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires that environmental factors be considered in the decision-making process. And as you can see in the figure here, we look at a wide range of environmental factors that may affect the project and may affect decisions that are made. We haven't done all the studies at this point, but some of the key issues that we anticipate are traffic noise. We have done a preliminary study for all the alternatives based on preliminary design information, plan and profile information. And it appears that although noise levels are relatively high now and are likely to increase because traffic will increase with all of the alternatives, we still fall below the criteria that would trigger noise abatement. We will do a more detailed study once a preferred alternative is defined and we have a little bit more design information. As Claudia mentioned, visual effects are important. This is an opportunity to do some visual enhancements, and we encourage your input on how you feel about aesthetics and bridge art and aesthetic considerations. And then another important part of the environmental process is community impacts. Although like any project, this project will have impacts on access and traffic flow and so on during construction. But in the long term, it's expected to improve multimodal access and just generally make the community better in keeping with the culture and the goals in Santa Fe to have lots of pedestrian and bicycle facilities and multimodal access. Important part of the NEPA process is public involvement. That's what we're doing here tonight. We want to hear what your concerns are and any issues or special information that you have. Thank you.
Okay, so now that we've kind of given you an overview of what we looked at in terms of criteria and how the what the alternatives look like and some of the positives and downsides to each of those alternatives, I'd like to discuss what the study team is recommending for this project area. The recommended alternative is the ramp reconfiguration, which was alternative 3, with a couple of options. And the primary option, we are recommending that the 4-lane St. Michael's section be included with the recommended alternative. So again, what you're looking at is basically the ramp reconfiguration where ramps on the west side stay in their location. The extended merge areas are included here. This is the new horseshoe ramp, new intersection where these both directions are consolidated here. Now you have the merge coming in well south of the bridge, traveling over a widened structure and able to merge back into traffic prior to West San Mateo. That is probably the primary advantage between, say, comparing this to the Diamond, where that really didn't take care of getting that connection made in advance of San Mateo and would force you to take a 4th lane through this intersection, which just widens that intersection and creates other, it's somewhat problematic, and this solves that. It includes all of the pedestrian improvements that we talked about. So it does correct those key physical merge areas and other operational deficiencies throughout the project area. It allows for the enhanced pedestrian access and connectivity that we've been talking about, completing the access in the north-south direction, making connections with the multi-use trail on this side, connecting everything back up with St. Michael's. It includes new bicycle lanes on St. Michael's Drive that we showed you in those illustrated cross sections. It does improve the safety at these intersections. Now, all of these intersections are going to be would be more urban in nature. For instance, in the existing condition, I showed you earlier that there was that kind of free right-hand movement that people traveled and caused some problems approaching Galisteo. Under all of these alternatives, we'd be consolidating these intersections, tighter radiuses, smaller, making them safer, certainly for pedestrians. I did mention that one of the primary benefits here is that including the 4-lane St. Michael's section is consistent with the city of Santa Fe and Santa Fe MPO local transportation goal and planning efforts. A number of you may be aware that the city now is looking, as they take ownership of St. Michael's, there's no time frame yet, but they are looking at evaluating whether St. Michael's between this interchange all the way down to, I think, Llano, could be reduced from 6 lanes to 4 lanes, and other kind of multimodal improvements put in that place using that space. And this would be consistent with that. At Siringo Road, I had mentioned we looked at some options, and there is some significant benefit, we think, to adding a second northbound turn lane from St. Francis back onto Siringo Road heading to the west. And that has also been recommended as a component of these improvements. We discussed a little bit, well, we didn't. I'd like to point out that this alternative, as well as most of them, it's pretty much the built environment. The existing interchange takes up a lot of space. So the improvements that we're discussing, we don't anticipate having any permanent impacts to facilities in the area, other than the one I pointed out with the signalized intersection that would definitely cause us to relocate a drainage pond. But there are no impacts to adjacent residences or businesses, no new right-of-ways anticipated at this time. So it's going to minimize construction impacts. Now, in terms of maintenance of construction, that's handling traffic during construction. This, as with all of the alternatives, is going to present challenges. They're both very heavily traveled roadways. It's going to be, it is going to be disruption to traffic during construction, but this allows us to minimize that construction in some key ways. The estimated cost of these improvements is just a little over $43 million. All of the interchange alternatives were in that $40 to $45 million range. The at-grade intersection would be the cheapest of all. I think it was in the $30 million range. So following tonight's meeting, we're going to take all of your comments that we receive, and we're going to discuss them in terms of how they may or may not interface with the evaluation that we've completed to date. We anticipate finalizing this Phase B study this fall. And then the next step is to get Federal Highway Administration concurrence, which we anticipate happening fall or this winter of this year. And then we're going to be moving into the preliminary design of the preferred alternative, and that'll occur this winter into the spring of next year. We talked about the environmental documentation process. That'll be elements of that going on throughout the remainder of project development. Those exact deadlines still need to be determined. We will initiate our design efforts with what's called preliminary design. So following on to that is a final design stage. That still has to be determined in terms of time frame when that's going to happen. And in terms of construction, I can tell you that the department does not have the full funding for this project at this time. So we cannot tell you when we anticipate it going to construction. That's going to be an ongoing determination that the district will need to make as funds become available. That concludes the basic presentation of our findings on the study. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how you can participate in the meeting, and then we'll open up to questions and answers. Joey, you want to talk them through this?
Yes, thank you. Yes, to participate in tonight's meeting, if you'd like to ask a question, all you have to do is raise your hand. If you're joining us on your phone, just press *9, and then we'll call on you and unmute you so that you can ask your question. If you're using your phone, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Or if you'd like to ask a written question, which we do have a couple of questions already, just click on the Q&A box. The box will pop up, type out your question, and hit send or the little arrow. And so we do have a couple of written questions right now. One is, do you expect to need additional right-of-way?
No, at the present time, we believe we can complete all the improvements under the recommended alternative within the existing right-of-way.
Okay, and then another question from Marie. Do you have a 3D model of the alternatives to show this evening?
No, we don't have, we have not generated 3D models. Generally, what we're trying to accomplish here is kind of how the alternatives compare with each other. I do understand your question, especially as I'm describing how a mainline grade may be lowered, for instance, coming back down to St. Michael's under the intersection alternative or under the on-ramps on the last alternative. But no, we typically do not do full 3D illustrations at this stage of the study. It could be something that we would look at as part of a visual analysis once we move down the road and we narrow this down to actually what's being proposed.
Well, thanks. And if we could go to the next slide, then we can show folks how they can share their comments and questions, not only tonight, but written questions. You can visit the project website and use an online comment form at bit.ly St. Mike, or you can email comments to jtashek@ecosphere-services.com, or mail your comments to John at Ecosphere Environmental Services, 320 Osuna Road Northeast, Suite C1, Albuquerque, 87107, or you can call in at 505-980-0993, and materials are available for Spanish speakers. So Madeline Carey has her hand up. And so Madeline, what is your question this evening?
Hi, thank you so much. My question is if there's been a conversation about doing segregated or separated bike lanes. I've studied urban planning. I work in advocacy. I believe in the future we will have streetscapes where all bike lanes are segregated. And given that the timeline of redesigning and rebuilding intersections like this looks like it's 50 plus years, I just would like to encourage you to really consider that option. We've had 2 cyclists killed near here in the past month. Drivers aren't getting less distracted. Cars aren't being made to be safer. And one of the most important things we can do is when we have opportunities like this project is create physical barriers between the lanes of traffic and the bike lanes, especially when we have as much space as it sounds like we're playing with. And in my opinion, it'd be more important to do that on St. Mike's and St. Francis and think about connecting the hospital to the bike trail that goes along the railroad tracks. But yeah, a question if that has been considered at all and what would need to happen to make that a reality.
So this is Carlos. I'll take a initial response to that question, then I'll ask Claudia probably to give us her thoughts on it. But so in terms of along St. Michael's Drive, what we are showing now is a buffered area. So it isn't a physically separated area to the on-street bike lane, but it would be a striped area. Now, along St. Francis Drive, it's important to note that St. Francis Drive is not a bicycle facility. The bicycle facility in this area are actually carried along the adjacent streets, along Pacheco and along Galisteo. But there is that multi-use trail in the southeast quadrant of the interchange that I talked about that is used by off-street bicyclists in the multi-use trail. So with that, I'll let Claudia expand a little bit. Go ahead, Claudia.
Thanks, Carlos. Yeah, I think from a standpoint of St. Francis, really because of the volume of traffic on that street and the narrowness of it, from an urban biker standpoint, we're encouraging people to take parallel routes that are safer. That in some cases already exist. So the rail trail and then the St. Francis Trail that is adjacent to this intersection. So we're trying to provide better connectivity as you head north. For St. Mike's, we show in the section, I think that's a good spot to look, a 5 foot wide, and that's from edge of curb and gutter to the buffer, and a 18-inch to 2 foot buffer to the drive lane. So we show a bollard there. I think in some cases we could potentially have an actual barrier there. But obviously that would need to be worked out. Depending on the alternative, there's a number of different movements that need to cross the bike lane. So how that works out in plan is something that needs to be still finalized. But I think we're trying to have that separated facility here.
Thank you, Claudia.
And then we have a couple of written questions. Varee Simons is asking, is it possible to download the slides that were shown during the presentation?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So after tonight's presentation, may take us a day or two, but we will get this presentation posted to that project website, that the bit.ly St. Mike's website. And you'll also find a lot of other information there. You will find information from the Phase A portion of this study. You will find some photo-based displays of all these alternatives that show a lot more detail than we were able to illustrate as part of the PowerPoint presentation. But this presentation will be posted to the project website within the next few days.
And in a few weeks, it will take us at least past the end of the comment period on October 13th. We will also have a written summary of the meeting tonight, along with comments and responses, and we may take some time to develop responses to some of the questions, but that will be on the website as well.
And the intent is to keep this website up to date as the project moves forward, to keep adding information to it. So it's a good resource for you if you want to investigate more detailed information.
Thank you. And then we have another question from Aria Chiodo. Are the planned bike lanes on St. Michael's fully protected bike lanes?
Oh, okay, again, we are not looking at bike lanes. Did he say St. Michael's? I'm sorry. Or did he say asking St. Michael's or St. Francis?
St. Michael's.
I'm sorry. Okay, yeah. Repeat the question. I'm sorry, Joey.
Are the planned bike lanes on St. Michael's fully protected bike lanes?
I think that's the question that the previous person asked. Is right now they're shown as a at-grade buffer area, but as Claudia described, as we get into design, we can look at alternatives. So they're separated, but we're not sure whether there will be a physical separation, for instance, a median or something like that between them. Again, there is, we do have the widened sidewalks in that area. We do have the multi-use trail and connections to other facilities. But as far as the on-lane bike lanes, this is what we're showing is similar to what exists east of Galisteo, only I think these are a little bit wider than those.
Okay.
Anything to add, Claudia?
Yeah, Carlos, this is Javier Martinez. I just would like to add, anything along St. Michael's Drive, we'd coordinate closely with the city of Santa Fe and also Santa Fe MPO.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Again, as we talked about, they now own and maintain the facility. They're part of our study team, so all of these issues will be closely coordinated with them. In addition to that, Claudia was talking a little bit about landscape opportunities and things like that. Those will all have to be worked out with the city as they do own St. Michael's. So all those issues will be discussed in depth with them as the project moves forward.
Okay, and then we have another question from Bree Simons. And her question is, what would be the impact to the northeast side ponding area?
Okay, it would vary depending on the alternative. I think what I would probably best describe it by this. Let me do this. Let me go back to what's there now. So this is the existing interchange. So that ponding area that we're pointing out is right in this area. It's adjacent to that existing ramp that comes off of St. Michael's. And it's a pretty significant area that takes a majority of the flows coming down St. Michael's are held here before they're sent down a storm drainage system along St. Michael's. So in terms of the impact, it really varies among the alternatives, but the one that does definitely require its relocation would be the signalized intersection alternative. And that is because the alignment was moved further off to the east in order to be able to construct it while we maintain traffic on the existing bridge. So this alignment goes right through that area that I just showed you. All the other alternatives would have minor impact to no impact because they're just not, by the time you get to where that pond is, they're pulling back in toward St. Francis Drive. So this one, for instance, on the preferred alternative, the ramp reconfiguration, we're eliminating that ramp. These are just pedestrian, so there would be no impact to the pond under this alternative. So it depends on the alternative, but the one that we wanted to point out the difference, the one that had the significant impact to it would be the at-grade intersection.
Okay, thank you. And Theodore Pomeroy had a question, and we may have already answered this, but the question was St. Michael's Drive, 4 lanes. Is that 4 in each direction or 2 each way?
Sorry, let me clear. It's 2 in each direction for a total of 4 lanes.
Great, okay.
Plus the bicycle lanes, plus the on-street bicycle lanes.
Okay, and then another question from Mike Galizio. Under alternative 3, are signals being added to the US 285 off-ramps intersections on St. Michael's Drive.
Okay, so he's asking about the recommended alternative, right? Alternative 3. So yes, so just to run you through what's there. So Pacheco Street would remain unchanged. There's an existing signal there. The existing signal at the south ramps would be reconfigured a little bit, but it would remain as a signalized intersection. Then where there is, under the existing condition, right now, there's not a signal here, but by eliminating the westbound and northbound ramp and consolidating it, there will be a left-hand turn movement to get on in this direction or right in this. So this would be a new signalized intersection. And then, of course, Galisteo would remain a signalized intersection as it is now.
Okay, and then we have another question. Who will the funding of $39 to $45 million come from?
I'm gonna let Javier, you want to take a shot at answering that?
You repeat the question, Carlos?
Go ahead, Joey.
Who will the funding of the $39 to $45 million come from?
Right now, we have it in our state transportation improvement plan in the outer years. So we're probably looking for federal money that would construct it. But right now, we don't have it within our next 4 years of the STIP. We have it in our outer years of the STIP, which means currently it's unfunded, but we would be looking for federal funds, possibly some grants.
Okay, yes, and the second part of their question was how much of it would be federally funded?
Approximately 80% federal funds, the 20% would be state funds. That's typical for any federal project.
Okay, and then another question from Theodore Pomeroy. Would the new bridge be wider?
Depends on the alternative. Obviously, under alternative 1, there would be no new bridge because it would be a signalized intersection. Under alternative 2, marginally wider, that's the Diamond Interchange. Let me go up here. It's always helpful to look at display. So marginally wider, but not substantially. I mean, maybe just a little bit to accommodate some improvements along St. Francis. The one that would be wider would be what we're recommending, the recommended alternative. And the reason for that is because it'll still carry 3 lanes of traffic in the southbound direction, but in order to accommodate that merge lane that we've been talking about, that merge lane is going to be brought on south of the bridge, and it's going to extend over the bridge and over St. Michael's. So the bridge would be an extra lane wide on the east side. Now, under the final alternative, instead of 1 bridge, it'd be 2 smaller bridges that would just take care of accommodate 3 lanes in each direction. So depending on the alternative.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. That's all the written questions that we have right now. And we don't have anyone, well, let's see. Dan Painter has a question. What is your question?
Yeah, you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. My name's Dan Painter. I'm on the city's bicycle pedestrian advisory committee. We're very concerned about how this interchange is redesigned with regards to how it's going to accommodate pedestrians and bicycles. When I look at the alternative that is recommended alternative, obviously northbound pedestrians and bicycles on the east side are kind of forced to go into a substantial out of the way direction in order to get north. Let's say they were just wanting to travel up St. Francis. Have you looked at the potential of any type of pedestrian and or bicycle overpasses, bridges of any kind, either just at the crossings as you show them, or maybe even attached to the main line itself to just to make it more direct travel for those folks?
So I guess there's several areas to address in terms of your question. So in terms of proximity, I mean, right now, and that has been the case all along, it's really envisioned that anyone who's traveling along St. Francis, I'm talking about pedestrians now, would come along the ramps and they're going to cross at improved intersections. So again, I mentioned before that these intersections are going to be collapsed, tighter radiuses to make them more urban in nature, shorter crossing distances, signals with full pedestrian phases. But the crossing traffic here would be at grade. On the east side, it's a little different. So it is somewhat out of direction, but it's keeping people out from trying to cross, ramp areas here. So the idea is to use that multi-use trail in this quadrant. But again, right now, it takes you all the way to Galisteo. We're proposing that we would connect to this to bring it alongside the ramp here, back down to this, again, a safe intersection crossing, which again would be signalized, urban in nature, refuge areas, pedestrian phases. Now you could cross to St. Michael's. And so now, where nothing exists in this quadrant, we have room to actually connect back up and take pedestrians back up along here, up to back to the West San Mateo intersection. So a little out of direction on this, but I think it does a nice job of tying in that multi-use trail and producing that connectivity that we were talking about. So no, in terms of, we have not looked at the need for an overpass or a pedestrian overpass in these areas.
Okay, am I still on? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned on westbound St. Michael's. It looks like you could end up with something of a green intersection, if you will, where basically westbound traffic continues moving. Left turns coming off of St. Francis Drive to westbound would go into a right at the intersection we were just talking about there, right there.
Okay.
So you could have the outside lanes of St. Michael's continually moving and not have to stop for any reason. I mean, because there's no cross traffic there. The only traffic you have to concern with is obviously that coming off St. Francis making a left turn, which could be handled inside a separate, why I always refer to them as a green intersection, or there's another term, I can't think what it is now, but basically a light just for the left turning traffic only. Through traffic doesn't stop. Has that been looked at? And if so, that is much more difficult, obviously, for pedestrians.
Well, actually, what we're looking at here is a full intersection. It's just a T intersection, but it would have traffic lights. In other words, it would stop traffic in the east-west direction along St. Michael's Drive. So if you're heading westbound, you would be in a left-hand turn lane. You would need the signal, you would need the phase to turn left and get on the ramp. If you're heading eastbound, you'd be in a right-hand turn lane in a stop condition before you can turn right to get on the ramp. So it would be a fully signalized intersection, again, with pedestrian phases and crossing, very similar to what's here, or what will be here. That'll be improved, but it will be a controlled intersection. So there will be traffic stopped in that direction.
Okay, and that you feel will work just fine with increasing traffic and everything on there.
Yeah, I mean, St. Michael's does carry traffic. I guess I would say that it would not be, it's going to be improved, but all intersections on St. Michael's are at grade intersections. I do hear your point. I mean, the next step up would be to grade separate them, and that would be some sort of a pedestrian bridge, maybe in one or more locations. That would let pedestrians come up, and over the top. Those work well in some areas. Some of the problems you always run into is they do have long ramps, so sometimes you have trouble getting people to actually use them. But that's a good comment, and we'd like you to submit it if you think that would be a substantial improvement, because that's something that could be implemented with the preferred alternative.
Okay, and I would just echo some of the comments that were made earlier that this is a new construction. There's really no reason why we can't do a really separated bicycle facilities, especially along these two roads, which are heavily traveled. And when I say separated, I don't mean just by 2 feet of distance, that's some sort of structure to actually keep them separated and make them safer.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And we have a question from Tristan Carnes. Would option 4 not have the same weaving issue for the traffic attempting to turn right/east on San Mateo? I assume that traffic in that direction would be less than the traffic that wants to turn left or west on San Mateo.
Yeah, that's a great question. Very, she's thinking very, very clearly here. So the difference here is it still would have the weave condition, but instead of the weave happening outside on the right, again, let's go in the direction toward West San Mateo. You would come through this intersection, you would be at grade through a signal, and now you're climbing uphill to meet the grade here. So when you get to this point, you still have to merge into traffic. You still have to merge into this northbound traffic. The difference is instead of merging in from the right side, that's why we call it left on axis, you would merge in from the left side. So now instead of like on the diamond, the problem being you're weaving from right to left to make a left turn. If you were coming through wanting to come here and turn right on San Mateo, you would have a similar issue. You would have a very short distance to cross through to make a right-hand turn. And similarly, because it's so close to the intersection, this new merge lane would have to go through this intersection. So alternatives to the diamond and this alternative, one of the main drawbacks is to get that additional merge lane through the intersection, it adds a full lane to St. Francis Drive through what's, pretty much a smaller intersection. So it widens that intersection. The intersection's developed here. There's driveway access that's very, very close. So it's problematic in terms of both how it functions and and what impact it might have to the surrounding properties. That was probably one of the biggest advantages to alternative 3 and the preferred alternative is by getting rid of that, you're able to bring them back to the south and you have adequate room to merge them in before you ever get to the intersection. And that takes care of the problem with a weave. Now you've got adequate distance to do whatever you need to do. So it eliminates the weave in this direction. And it also, by getting rid of that free right here and bringing it through a controlled intersection, the weave approaching Galisteo is also eliminated.
Well, thank you, Carlos. Let's see, Dan has his hand up again. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Dan.
Thank you. I just listening to your conversation there. It seems like it may be worthwhile to even consider restricting left-hand turns at San Mateo for northbound St. Francis, only because if you want to go to that area of San Mateo to the west, it's very easy to get off in St. Michael's, you hit Pacheco, and you're there in 30 seconds or whatever. I think it would be very worthwhile because with that left-hand turn from the diagram you were showing, you'd have merges. You'd have a merge for people who are going on straight through who want to get over to the left, and then you've got people who are coming up off of that ramp who are going to be trying to get over to the right, and you've got a really, I think, a dangerous weave section there with people competing for. It's probably about as bad as it is now, but I think by eliminating that left turn, it may be making the whole situation better.
Yeah, and actually we did look at that as part of this. So what that would take care of a weave condition under where we're still in very close to that intersection. It would, and I agree with you. There are alternate things you can come up with Pacheco, but it would substantially change travel patterns in here. I mean, all of you know that there's a lot of people who come and actually turn southbound and go along San Mateo into the neighborhoods, a back way into the hospital. So that is certainly possible. It would change traffic patterns in the area, I think in a substantial way. We did look at it, but again, I'll come back to what we're recommending. That's one of the big benefits of this alternative is because we're able to bring them in further to the south, we now have adequate room to safely merge them in before we ever get to West San Mateo, and those concerns are eliminated at both of these spots. So one of the major advantages of this ramp reconfiguration alternative.
Okay.
And Marie Shook has a question. Go ahead, Marie. Or you'll have to unmute yourself.
Done.
There you go.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes.
So you looked at the intersection heading towards Siringo, right? Do you add more lanes on headed towards Siringo Road? Or what happens at that bypass interchange?
So what we looked at, you're talking about the Siringo Road intersection, correct?
Yes, as you come from, say you're coming from St. Mike's onto St. Francis towards Siringo Road.
Okay, so you're coming off. So what would happen? You're coming off, you come through the intersection at the ramps, you would turn right. Now you're coming southbound. So where the merge is now, we're going to correct that by actually extending a fourth lane for a distance down here towards Siringo. Now we got plenty of room where we could merge traffic back in. So we'd bring them back into that 3-lane configuration. And then what we're showing at what we'd like to do at Siringo is right now, if you know, there's that free right hand movement. There's one left turn lane coming northbound. It typically backs up quite a bit. It's a pretty heavy movement. So we're saying that we can make some geometric changes here to consolidate this intersection, make it more urban, get rid of that free right, collapse, tighter radiuses, more pedestrian friendly. And we looked at if we can add a second northbound left turn lane, then because we've eliminated that free right here, there's enough room actually to have both turn lanes come here into onto Siringo. And then what would happen is the outermost one would end at Pacheco Street. So it would be improving the intersection and improving this west leg.
Okay, and now from there, I don't know, did you go, are you guys able to look down into the Zia St. Francis intersection as well? How that could be improved?
Yeah, so that's some of the feedback I know in the first meeting. I know there's a lot of issues going on further south in the corridor with new development that's occurring there. So the short answer to your question is really those types of things are going to have to be looked at in the future. I mean, there's lots of different options that might be implemented there. It made sense for us in this study to be looking at these outer intersections of our limits, making improvements. So we would be ending our improvements at Siringo and tying back into what's there south of that. So no, this study did not consider possible improvements further south. I can tell you, I know there's been kind of high level studies that have been done even as far back as 2010 that looked at things that might need to be done there at some point in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Right now, we don't have any open questions. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and we'll give you an opportunity to tell us what you think, or you can go ahead and use the question and answer box to type in your questions. And of course, we would like to encourage everyone to provide their written comments on the project. So Carlos, if you could move to the last slide, just so that we can share that information with everyone before we end the meeting here.
And maybe during this downtime, I'd ask my colleagues that are also on the panel if there's anything that you guys would like to add to the discussion. I know I've been talking quite a bit. Okay, I guess that means we're doing all right.
Right. We still don't have any open questions. Feel free to raise your hand or go ahead and type in a question.
So it's 7:20, Joey. Let's give them a few minutes, couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes, and see if we're going to have any more questions. If not, we can think about wrapping it up, I think.
Yes, and just remember to submit your comments by October 13th. Oh, Marie has her hand up. Go ahead, Marie.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just a question. So the interchange there at St. Francis and St. Mike's, there was comment about taking the 6 lanes down to 4. Would that be part of this project as well?
Yes, this is, so let me just, again, a little bit of background of what the study considered. And the best way to show it is to show you what's there now. So the short answer to your question is yes, but to give some context of what we looked at. So St. Francis Drive, 3 lanes in each direction, that was going to, that has not been looked at being altered. The main difference is adding those merge lanes that we've been discussing. Now, if you think about what's there right now, it's really a lot different. So St. Michael's to the west is 6 lanes. And then what happens is it drops a lane coming through. So in this area under the bridge, it's 5 lanes. It's 2 lanes in the westbound direction and 3 this direction. And the third one actually drops to that outside loop ramp. And then once you get past here, it turns into an existing 4-lane condition. That's what we were showing in those illustrative sections, and ties into Galisteo. So the study looked at doing 2 basic things. One is taking 6 lanes as it exists now, extending it through the interchange to Galisteo, where we would go back to 4 lanes. And then the city asked us again to look at that 4-lane option, which is the opposite. It would be taking 4 lanes from Galisteo through the interchange and ending it here. Now it's still going to be existing 6 lanes in the existing condition, but this is the effort that I was talking about. The regional plans with the city and the MPO are going to be investigating whether that could actually 4-lane sections be extended further west. So that's kind of the framework of how we looked at it. Under the recommended alternative, we did look at how it operates, and the 4 lanes operated just fine. There were no issues with it. So part of that recommended alternative is that St. Mike's improvements will be 4 lanes through the interchange, and that will be included as part of the project.
Okay, but it won't extend past, say, Pacheco, turning it into 4 lanes to Llano, correct?
Not at this time. So what we would be doing is we would be marrying into what's there now, going from 4 to 6. And Pacheco Street intersection would not be part of the project. It would remain functioning as it is. And then the city, I think, I don't know when, I don't know if it's even programmed, but at some point in time, I think they intend on taking up the study of what to do to the west. And they will be looking at a possibility of going to 4 lanes, but this project would just tie to that. It would not be making any, the improvements on this project would pretty much stop just west of this ramp intersection. It would not include Pacheco Street.
Okay, thank you.
And we have another question from Mike. Under alternative 3, consider converting the northbound on-ramp to US 285 to a shared use path to accommodate pedestrian bike travel from westbound St. Michael's Drive to northbound US 285.
Yeah, that's a good comment. What we're showing here, this could be normal sidewalk. This could be multi-use path. There is space there that's, I think, what we meant by, potential for enhanced improvements here, because we do have this space available. So that is certainly something that we could look at. In terms, I guess basically what we're going to want to find out is what enhances connectivity and what serves all the directional needs. So that's a good comment and something that we will definitely be looking at.
Okay, thank you, Carlos. Right now, we don't have any open questions. We still have some time. If you have a question, please raise your hand, or you can go ahead and type your question into the Q&A box. Well, it looks like we probably don't have any other additional questions.
Okay, Esteban, Jennifer, do you think we're in a position to close the meeting, or how'd you like to?
Yes, Carlos, I think, yes, I think we're ready to adjourn the meeting. I don't see any other additional comments in the Q&A or hand raise. So yes, we could adjourn the meeting, Carlos.
Okay, on behalf of our team, I'd like to thank you all for attending. You had some very good questions. We encourage your input. Again, please, there's a multitude of ways to provide comments. All your questions tonight that you asked will be part of the meeting record and the public comment record. And please get to your comments to us by October 13th. So thank you so much for attending. We are anxiously awaiting to hear from you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Brasher,
Thank you for your help, Carlos. Thank you, team. Thank you, Esteban.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, team. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.